All right, everybody, thank you for watching. Joining me now, two very talented Rochesterians. We've got Vinnie Paulino and we have Billy DiTore. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, absolutely.
So, podcasts, I'm hearing, are getting fairly popular amongst the kids.
And the adults. Good.
You know, it's so we do see all of these huge podcasts. It's so nice to see them blossoming here locally.
Well, yeah, agreed. Completely agreed. I have been podcasting myself since 2011. And this show we started 2 years ago, and I cannot believe the amount of success we've had with it, and just the amount of positive interaction we've had with fans and growing the fan base on it as well.
So this is called Carlsoncast, and it's based out of Comedy at the Carlson, which is right down the street from us. We're very lucky. We have both Radio Social and Comedy at the Carlson. My good friend Todd Yugman helps out with that, and Mark Ippolito. Before we get into the actual podcast, let's just talk about that facility. I've gone to a lot of comedy clubs because every city I go to, I try to go to one. This is a step above, especially for our kind of market, I think.
100%. I mean, bigger cities like Buffalo, you know, their biggest club, we have 100 more seats then. They don't have 2 showrooms.
Yeah.
They don't have music facilities to have bands. They don't have half of the things that the Carlson does.
Yeah.
I mean, we're set up for so many multi-use things that it blows my mind every time I talk to Mark. Like, we had Val Kilmer come into town, and he did a movie premiere, you know? Okay, let's do it.
That's what we did. Yeah. And I love Helium in Buffalo, but Absolutely. This is just totally different. And Billy, you just signed on to this?
Yeah, I recently was let go from my job on the radio. I was on the radio for 20 years with Brother Weeze, and the company that I was part of decided that they didn't need about 1,000 people across the country, and I was one of them. And Vinnie and Mark reached out to me and said, hey, can we do something with you? You've been part of the local media for decades now, and people know who you are, and I'm known as sort of a pop culture trivia nerd. And I've always loved comedy since I was a little kid. I used to borrow comedy records from the library and listen to them. So I sort of know comedy, and Vinnie and I have always chatted. We've been friends for a while, and when I had some time, Vinnie said, why don't we do something together? Why don't you become part of our little podcast emporium here?
Our pirate ship, we call it.
Why do you call it a pirate ship?
Because we just kind of function outside of the mainstream, and that's the cool thing about podcasts. Like, you know, we don't have to have a set time limit. We don't have to have any type of censorship as to if I have a comedian sitting on the couch and they want to swear, be my guest. You know, like, we have a lot of freedom to kind of sail the open waves and explore and do things a little differently.
You do stand-up comedy. Does that mean that the interviews can get fairly esoteric in that it's a comedian interviewing a comedian, or do you keep it kind of broad?
So there are times when I will be sitting across from somebody and they are so fascinating to me, and their acts, like, because I really try to do research for whoever's there.
Yeah.
I will watch as much of their content as I get my hands on, and sometimes I am guilty of wanting to go down the road of like, okay, so you wrote this joke, where were you, how did you come up with this?
But I would think that folks like Billy, myself, who are, you know, just fans, would be interested in that type of...
There is a fair share of it. We try to talk that way about the writing process with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But in a way, what I like to think of what we do, and this is going to sound kind of weird, we collect origin stories. We talk about, hey, listen, where did you grew up in Cleveland? Well, you grew up in Cleveland. Where did you start doing stand-up? How did you even hear about comedy? What was the first time performing like for you? And, you know, we like to talk to people about the long, strange trips that they go on from early life to the stage.
I feel like when you get into early life for comedians, it must at times get dark, because you always hear about the great comedians usually have a bit of trauma in their life.
We tend to attract damaged people. I'm not gonna lie. It's, you know, you have to have a real sort of like sickness to you that you want to go put yourself out there the way stand-up comics do, because when you think about what stand-up comedy is in general, it's someone who stands on a stage by themselves and through their words is forcing people to react to what they're saying, and that's a really powerful thing. And like to understand it and to pursue it, yeah, you're pretty mental.
And the hope for approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a big, please hug me and love me.
Well, and unlike a singer where you know you have something that they like, or you hope you do, or a dancer or something, it's you. And it's like, it's whether you're funny or not. I mean, how more, I've never seen anything in which you're more exposed than that.
There's not a lot of,
I mean, besides like, not physically.
well, I mean, when you talk about like stagecraft and stuff like that, you look at like people who perform in plays, people who do Broadway and stuff like that, they have a whole team around them.
Right.
It's very different when you're just kind of by your lonesome and left to your devices with what you think is funny.
Yeah. And to make your podcast even more successful than it is the people you get to sit down with you, and that's partly because of how reputable Comedy at the Carlson is. They bring in some huge names, recognizable names, Gilbert Gottfried. It just goes on. And then for you to be able to for them to open themselves up to do a podcast with you.
Well, it blows my mind too how honest people get. Like, I think that comics can pick up on a vibe. Like, we have a nice comfortable couch, we get them some coffee, and I don't think they are expecting what they get out of us. Because when you do the media rounds, you go and you do a television or a radio interview, there's set time. Hey, come see me this weekend, we're gonna do some jokes.
Right.
This is, wait a second, you wanna talk about my parents?
And they're surprised by, like, they don't get that a lot around the country?
I don't think they do.
Yeah.
I don't think they do. Like, I don't necessarily think a lot of them, the most common thing that people say to me, comics will say to me after a show is, how long did we just talk? I just don't think they realize, like, that we want to get to know them.
That's interesting.
And that, like, we try to take it to that different level to make it a little more personal, because I think that if you watch and listen to the show, you'll get to know that comic in a way that you did not know them before.
Wow. Talking with Vinnie and Billy about their podcast. It's called the Carlsoncast. Where can you find this, by the way?
Everywhere. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We are Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We actually do the show live. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We do it completely live in our studio. You could peek in and watch it on Friday mornings as we do it, and then you can listen to it later.
Carlsoncast.com. My former employee, iHeartRadio.com.
Yeah. iHeartMedia. We're on iHeartMedia.
Oh, wow.
Pandora.
That's
We're
huge.
everywhere podcasts are sold.
Can you be explicit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's super good, and it's getting a lot of attention. What they do is they interview comedians, and this is a popular type of podcast, so they have a lot of competition, and you break the top 100 consistently throughout the U.S. and Canada.
Yep, and all over the world. Every week, or every day actually, I try not to check it every day or I'd go completely insane, but I get a numbers report, and I can see people listen to this all over the world because comedy is one of those universal things. If there's a comedian that you like, say you're a big fan of Mark Normand, who did our show a few months ago, and people look up Mark Normand, our interview pops up and it blows my mind.
Wow.
Like, no matter where they are in the world, if they love a comedian, they see, here's an hour interview with this guy.
Right.
And I think they're generally surprised by the kind of interview that it is.
Billy, you joined the team. I do want to touch on this. You call it an opportunity, some extra time.
Absolutely.
You had been with Wheeze, which is obviously, Wheeze is Wheeze.
I mean, he's my mentor.
Right.
I've known him since 1991 or 92 and been part of his show off and on since then. There was like a 10-year period where he switched stations, or actually he was still at his old station, but they had a restructuring thing. I wound up working at a factory, but still doing weekends with him. We used to do a music show together. And then he went to where he is now. I followed there, and so along the way, I've gotten a chance to meet 2 decades, 3 decades worth of comedians. Every Thursday, Friday, Wheeze would have the comedians in on his show, and like I said, I've always been a comedy nerd, so to meet Jay Moore, Kevin Meaney, Gilbert Gottfried, Mark Maron, it's been an insane ride, and some people I've become friends with, Bobby Slayton.
Yeah.
Love Bobby.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
So I've met literally hundreds of comedians over the years, got to talk with them. And all comedians that I've watched on TV, their HBO specials, all of a sudden I'm chatting with them and they're just hanging out.
What was this recent life, not to get too deep into that, but I do want to touch upon that. What has this recent development been like for you?
It was stunning. I wasn't expecting it. It's been my job for a long time, so it made me real sad. I miss the people I worked with, but it's gotten me closer to the listeners who've reached out to me and said, we miss you, we love you. Vinnie, Mark, the people at Comedy at the Carlson. I just started today a new job working at the Record Archive, where there are people through my sort of weird knowledge of music that I've accumulated, they said, hey, but why don't you come work here? And so I still get to meet people, recommend music, recommend comedy. I got lots of comedy records, and I'm really looking forward to being there and hanging out with new people. But I miss the people I worked with and being good at my job. I always thought I was really good at my job, so I get to start over now and still interact with the people that enjoyed me on the radio.
Well, if you haven't been surprised already by it, I'm sure you won't be by the fact that the skill set that you picked up is going to easily transfer over to things like this.
Wait till you hear what he's doing with us. You're going to love this.
I'm doing a This Week in Comedy History segment every week on the Carlsoncast.
That's
so
cool.
I go and I do my little research. So, nowadays the internet's made that easy, but there's just some things I know about. And
when you know what to search for.
Yeah, I know what this. When you know what you're looking for, it's easier to find. And I've come across some great little tidbits of knowledge, and I remember this story. Now I get to use it.
Yeah,
stories about the Tonight Show, and debuts of comedians, and Saturday Night Live, and comedy albums that won Grammys, and first appearances on TV, and stuff like that. Just stuff that I've always enjoyed. The first time Who's on First was performed in vaudeville, that type of stuff. So I'm looking forward to getting to share my little geekery with the people that listen to the Carlsoncast.
And I'm a total nerd, so I'm all about talking about this stuff with him.
Yeah.
All day, we go all day.
It just seems so classy. You mentioned Mark Maron. That's who I thought about when I thought about comedians interviewing comedians and podcasts. His is obviously one of the more famous ones.
You can't argue with WTF. You can't argue with it.
It's amazing, and I've learned a lot, and so I'm so glad that we've picked up on this, and there's going to be a local flavor to it.
The whole point of our show, even with Billy coming on board, helps us kind of be this one-stop shop for all things comedy. We're going to do the This Week in Comedy History segment. We do our interview with our performers, and then we also do a stand-up news segment at the end of our show.
Oh, nice.
So we cover everything that's happening right now in stand-up all over the world. We're covering everything that happened in stand-up ever.
Yeah.
And we have the best comedians every week.
And the funny thing is, you mentioned the explosion of podcasts. And I remember back when I was working on the radio, me and one of my coworkers did a podcast every day that we'd post online. And this was about a decade ago. And our boss at the time said, no one really knows what a podcast is. Can you call it on-demand audio? Okay, if you say so.
No, they didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, they didn't.
And
Is
right
that
now,
what you called it?
That's what we called it. And
It didn't take off?
No. And luckily now we get to go, well, now people know what podcasts are, so.
He's technically right. I mean, he was technically right.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about podcasts. I think that the way people consume media has changed quite a bit, obviously. And people like to see what they want to see when they want to see it. The DVR in your house, helped change that.
Right.
Having TiVo and, figuring out a way to do it with audio is the next logical step of the evolution of media, I think.
So if I listen in on Friday, who will I hear?
Takara Williams.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing about Comedy at the Carlson, and you know this, we have huge names. Takara is an up-and-coming performer. Takara is one of those people who you may not have heard of yet, but in a year or two, we're probably not going to be able to book her again.
Right.
Like that's the interesting thing about our club.
I remember a few years ago, back when the club used to be in Webster, Brother Weeze had a comedian in the studio by the name of Tiffany Haddish, who we'd never heard of.
Wow.
And now she's one of the biggest stars in the world.
I'm going to give Mark Ippolito some serious props. He is an incredible talent booker.
Yeah.
And this is going to be one of those silly little tips. If you're looking at coming to a comedy show and you go, oh, I don't know who that person is, obviously watch some videos, but if they were not hysterical, they would not be on our stage. If they were not worth buying a ticket to see, they wouldn't be here.
And that speaks to the trust that he's built over the years. I actually worked for a short stint at Comics Cafe.
No way.
It was great. Tiny Glover.
I remember Tiny.
Sure. Tiny and I, you had many conversations.
R.I.P.
Yeah. He taught me a lot and actually convinced me not to go into comedy, and but for good reason, because I wasn't funny. And then so what I realized is they did a nice job there, but it allowed me, once I went to comedy at the Carlson, to see that everything they do is at a different level. Even the open mic nights are done in such a professional, top-notch fashion, and to see it done with the podcast as well speaks volumes.
Well, thank you. We believe in excellence over there. Everything that happens at the Carlson, we're doing to do to the best of our ability, and I'm thrilled to be on that team. You don't even understand. They are working on it all the time, 24/7. There's always something going on that we're trying to either figure out or get booked or.
Yeah. Who would be your number one? Who, if you were to pick one person that you'd want to interview, who would it be? And snap
We
your
going
fingers.
alive or dead?
Let's do alive.
Roseanne.
Yeah? How come?
She's controversial.
Yeah.
She's had a real rough couple of years, and she has probably stories that would make my toes curl. And I just think, like, in the business, she would be fascinating to talk to get her opinions. Would like her or not, that's somebody that I would be thrilled and really interested to chat with.
I love that.
Norm Macdonald would probably be number 2.
Yeah, Norm is interesting. I follow him on Twitter, and I feel like he's gotten a bit odd as of late. I mean, he's always been odd, but in a very interesting way. But he's become almost philosophical in his old age, and it's been interesting to see this evolution on Twitter.
Have you ever seen Norm on Twitter when he just comments on
golf?
That's exactly what I was.
I actually have to block him while he's doing that, because it's like, Tiger Woods, great shot. Yeah. like, is this a joke? Because it's eating up my entire Twitter feed.
Whereas Colin Quinn will sometimes say things just to confuse people and make them mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Colin Quinn's a master on Twitter. Like, he's really a wordsmith, that guy.
Yeah, I got to interview him at the Comedy at the Carlson.
Me too.
Yeah,
that was one of the when Colin Quinn came in, when they said, you're going to interview the comedians, I didn't think they meant you're going to get to interview all the comedians.
The top ones, yeah.
And in comes walking Colin Quinn one morning, and I was just, I can't even believe this.
It's unbelievable.
It was like, unbelievable.
So I'll let Billy get the easy one. Alive or dead, who would you pick?
Mine is easy. Kevin Smith. He's my favorite guy. Director, podcaster, writer, amazing storyteller. He does live shows all across the country, and I'm just a big fan of. His movies are excellent, or I really enjoy them.
Yeah.
But his storytelling to me, and really, really funny. He knows how to paint a picture with words. I'm just a big fan. So.
Yeah,
as you should be. It's amazing how well his movies are holding up. Mallrats and
Clerks and Dogma and Chasing Amy. But he's got Jane Silent Bob Reboot just came out on DVD a couple weeks ago, and he travels the country.
It's Blu-ray, Billy.
Blu-ray. Digital streaming.
Is there on-demand audio?
On-demand audio. It missed it by this much. It was neck and neck with podcasts, and then it just.
So I'm going Kevin. I'm just a big fan.
You didn't ask me alive or dead.
I know. I wanted to give Billy that. All right, but I'll circle back. Who would you do?
Andy Kaufman.
Oh.
Okay.
That's all. Dad, I'm going Flip Wilson, the first black man to have his own variety show, and even back. This is what a comedy nerd I am. When I was let's see, Flip Wilson show was what, the early 70s? My parents got me the stuffed Flip Wilson doll that was Flip on one side, Geraldine on the other, and you pulled the string and it talked.
Yeah.
That's so
And
cool.
my cat was named Geraldine for 17 years because of it.
What did you name it after 17 years?
Well, it passed away.
Oh, okay.
Flip.
Thanks for bringing us down.
Anything else you'd like to add? Again, for those who are just joining, where do you find this podcast?
Well, the best way to find it is visit carlsoncast.com. There's a page that says subscribe, and it will show you all of the different places. We make it very easy. If you're a Spotify person, we're on Spotify. We're everywhere podcasts are sold. We're also on YouTube. And I say sold sarcastically. We don't charge you. It's completely free.
Right, right.
YouTube, we have a YouTube channel, and Facebook. Find us on Facebook. We do Instagram. We do social media. And yeah, we're out there to entertain. We're trying to bring comedy to as many people as we can.
I love it. And thank you for coming in.
No, thank
I know
you.
it's a long drive from Comedy at the Carlson.
It's cold out, Adam.
I know. So the Carlsoncast is a must listen to across the country, but especially given that it's happening right here and it's got some of the most talented people in Rochester working on it. Billy, a recent addition from the Brother Wease show. You can imagine how much experience he's bringing to the table. And Vinnie, always funny. And he gets to interview some of the most famous and funniest comedians.
Don't put that much pressure on me. Yeah.
He's funny a lot.
A lot. Okay, there we go. Often funny. And this has been great. So thank you, gentlemen, and I can't wait to listen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for having us.
Yep. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Great.